talk about leprosy because leprosy is a very insidious disease. It begins to kill the nerves in your body. You don't feel, you have no sense of touch. As you're living your life and you bump into things, you start bruising yourself because the nerves don't have any sensitivity. And then infection gets into those bruises and it turns the flesh white. It begins to decompose, begins to stink, a bad smell. And eventually, over a period of a few years, it will kill the person. Before 1940, there was no treatment, but there was no effective medication. Well, if we go back further to like the 1920s, the 30s, when the British were controlling Israel, there were Jews living there and leprosy was there. And people who contracted leprosy were highly contagious, so they couldn't live in the cities, they couldn't live in society. So what they did is they had a place outside of Jerusalem in one area where there were many caves. And the lepers would live in the caves for shelter in the wintertime, and shelter from the heat in the summertime. And there was a medical student, and this medical student was doing research on leprosy. So he went to visit the colony. And he's making notes. When did you get leprosy? What is your age? And he makes notations about the severity of the condition in their body. So he's taking information, many people. So the leper who is guiding him around these caves in this mountain region says, I want to show you something. So he took him into the cave, and he noticed that inside the cave, the people with more severe conditions were inside the cave. And the deeper he went into these caves, the more severe the conditions became. It's a more comfortable environment to be deep inside the cave where the temperature is stable. It's nice and cool. There's no flies. There's no bugs. This is a good place. So the man took him very deep inside, and he was noting everything. And he came to one room, and the man was holding his torch, and he said, enter. This medical student, he entered the room. When he entered the room, he saw something that was amazing that took his breath away. There was a man on a cot. The man had no legs. His arms were gone. He only had one stub of an arm. His eyes were gone. His lips were rotted. His teeth and his gums were rotted and diseased. He could not speak. His tongue was rotted and gone. Just a little bit of a tongue left. And when the medical student entered into the small little room deep in the cave, the man recognized on his cot, on his little bed, he recognized that somebody had entered. But suddenly, he takes his arm, what is left? Only the stub, and he puts this into the air, and he takes his body, and he twists like this, and as high as he can, he's pointing like this. The medical student said, what is he doing? The leper who was guiding him said, this man was a pastor before he got leprosy. And when he came to the leper colony here, he was ministering and preaching to the lepers, but as his condition became worse, we put him into this room. But still, this leper, when someone comes into the room, he wants to point them to Jesus Christ. This man is running the race that God has set before him, and he's running faithful with his last breath. Many people would say, curse God and die, but not this pastor. He said, no, I will glorify God with my rotted, decomposing, infected stub. I will lift this and point towards Jesus. Today, there are many people whose teaching would find this man to be in error. He should not be pointing his arm to heaven, to Jesus. He should be claiming, I am healed, speaking life into his body. I am not a leper. I am not diseased. I am healed. Because the leper was not doing that, they will criticize him, and they say he died and it was his fault. He died because his faith was not good. Are you ready to criticize that pastor? I would not criticize that pastor. I salute that pastor. He had a great trial, and in his trial, he was giving glory and worship to God. Who among us would do the same? We say, oh yes, I would do the same, but would we? If our body is rotting in a cave, in a mountain, will we give praise to God like this man?